Hello everyone, and welcome back to the channel. Today, we're journeying back in time over 800 years to witness a moment that would change the course of history forever. We're talking about a document so powerful, its echoes can be heard in constitutions and declarations of rights all around the globe. This is the story of the Magna Carta, the Great Charter. So, picture this. It's the early 13th century in England. The king is a man named John. Now, King John wasn't exactly winning any popularity contests. In fact, he's often remembered as one of England's worst monarchs. Why? Well, he was constantly getting into expensive conflicts, and to fund them, he wasn't just raising taxes. He was squeezing every last penny from his people, especially the powerful barons. Imagine you're a baron back then. You have land, you have influence, but the king can just waltz in, demand your money, seize your property, or even throw you in jail without a proper trial. There were no rules he had to play by. He was above the law. For the barons, this was a recipe for disaster. They were getting fed up. They felt their traditional rights and privileges were being trampled on, and they decided they had to do something about it. So, in the spring of 1215, a group of rebellious barons had enough. They marched on London and captured the city. This put King John in a very tight spot. He couldn't ignore them anymore. He was forced to negotiate. The two sides met in a meadow called Runnymede, right by the River Thames, on June 15, 1215, and there, under immense pressure, King John agreed to a list of demands. He didn't sign it, as we might imagine, but he affixed his royal seal to the document. This document was the Magna Carta. Now, let's be clear. The Magna Carta wasn't originally a grand declaration of rights for every single person in England. It was primarily a peace treaty, a practical solution to a political crisis. Most of its 63 clauses dealt with the specific grievances of the barons, things like inheritance rights, the regulation of taxes, and the control of royal forests. It was very much a product of its time, protecting the interests of the elite. But buried within this lengthy, medieval Latin text were some revolutionary ideas. And this is where it gets really interesting. Let's look at Clause 39, probably the most famous part of the entire charter. It states, "No free man shall be seized or imprisoned or stripped of his rights or possessions, except by the lawful judgment of his equals or by the law of the land." Pause and think about that for a second. No free man and the law of the land. This was groundbreaking. For the first time, it was being written down officially that the king himself was not above the law. He had to follow the rules just like everyone else. He couldn't just lock someone up on a whim. There had to be a legal process. This is the very seed of what we now call due process of law and the right to a trial by jury. Another key principle was tucked away in Clause 12, which said that no special taxes could be levied without general consent. Now, this general consent really only meant the consent of the barons and high-ranking churchmen at the time, but it planted the idea of no taxation without representation. Sound familiar? It's a concept that would ignite revolutions centuries later. The immediate aftermath of the Magna Carta was, well, a bit of a mess. King John had no real intention of honoring it. As soon as the barons dispersed, he got the Pope to declare the charter void. War broke out again, and John died just over a year later. It seemed like the Magna Carta was a failure, a forgotten footnote in a messy civil war. But here's the magic of a powerful idea. It doesn't just die. After John's death, his son, Henry III, was just a boy. The regent's ruling productive a dad, his name needed to win back the support of the barons. So what did they do? They reissued the Magna Carta in 1216, and again in 1217, and a final revised version in 1225. This last version became the definitive text, and it was confirmed by English monarchs over and over again throughout the centuries. With each reissue, the Magna Carta transformed. It went from being a specific peace treaty to a symbol. It became a touchstone, a fundamental text that people could point to when they felt their liberties were being threatened by an overreaching ruler. It was no longer just about the barons. It started to represent the rights of all English subjects. Fast forward a few hundred years to the 17th century. Figures like Sir Edward Coke, a prominent English lawyer, championed the Magna Carta as an ancient law guaranteeing the liberty of the individual against the absolute power of the monarch. He used it to argue against the Stuart kings who believed in their divine right to rule. The Magna Carta became a rallying cry for Parliament in its struggle against the king, a conflict that would ultimately lead to the English Civil War and the establishment of a constitutional monarchy. And its journey didn't stop at England's shores. When English settlers traveled to the New World, they brought the principles of the Magna Carta with them. They saw themselves as Englishmen, entitled to the same rights and freedoms. When the American colonists felt that King George III was violating these rights, imposing taxes without their consent, denying them fair trials, they looked back to the Magna Carta. Its influence is woven directly into the fabric of the United States. The Fifth Amendment's guarantee of due process of law is a direct descendant of Clause 39, the idea of checks and balances, of a government of laws and not of men. All of this can be traced back to that meadow at Runnymede. And it doesn't stop there. The Magna Carta's spirit inspired the Universal Declaration of Human Rights in 1948 and countless other charters of freedom around the world. It has become a global symbol for the rule of law and a powerful reminder that no one, no matter how powerful, is above the law. Of course, it's important to remember the context. The original charter didn't grant rights to the vast majority of the population who were unfree peasants. It didn't establish democracy as we know it. But that's not the point. Its power lies in its evolution. It lies in the principles it established, which could be expanded and reinterpreted for future generations. It started as a practical deal to solve a medieval power struggle, but it became a timeless ideal. It's a story of how a document, born of conflict and self-interest, could grow into one of the most important symbols of liberty in human history. It's a testament to the enduring power of an idea, the idea that everyone deserves justice and that freedom is a right worth fighting for. So, the next time you hear about the rule of law, a trial by jury, or a government being held accountable, remember that long, long journey. Remember the angry barons, the unpopular king, and the parchment sealed in a meadow over 800 years ago. Remember the Magna Carta? Thank you so much for joining me on this historical deep dive today. I hope you found it as fascinating as I do. If you enjoyed this video, please give it a thumbs up and don't forget to subscribe and hit that notification bell so you don't miss our next adventure into the past. Drop a comment below and let me know what historical event you'd like to see covered next. Until then, stay curious.